Donald Trump appeasing Vladimir Putin?
Yes, in the conventional sense of the term, of course he is. But that's a term, actually, Stephen, which belongs to the old world. It belongs to the notion that we are replaying the 1930s, that we are invoking Churchill, that we have Boris Johnson striking sub-Churchillian postures on all of this. And what we've got to understand is that the rules of the game have changed. They've changed utterly. The world in which we thought we lived, in which for most of my lifetime we've lived, which is a world of the so-called rules-based international system, Rubis, has shattered. Interestingly enough, I'm now going to don the mantle of prophet. Exactly 3 years ago, on the day that Putin invaded, I predicted the end of Rubis. I predicted the fact that we are going to move into a world which looks very much like the terrible world outlined by George Orwell in 1984, in which there are great permanent blocks of the world. He outlined Oceania, which is ourselves and America, against Eurasia, which is essentially an enlarged Soviet Union, and with an uneasy southern hemisphere. And it's something like that. We now have the combined power of Russia and China. We have the so-called BRICS with India, with South Africa, with Brazil, and we have the Anglosphere, all now in extraordinary competition with each other. Because you know what we've done? We've moved back from that world of the United Nations into something like 19th century great power politics. What we need to understand is, if you look back into the 19th century, we didn't talk about a United Nations or whatever. What we did, we talked simply about the concert of Europe, because that's what dominated then, in which the great powers negotiated directly with each other. We're back in the world, Stephen, of Palmerston. The idea that countries do not have permanent friends, do not have permanent allies, but have permanent interests. And you know what? America actually has always pursued that policy of America first. We think there's something unusual about Donald Trump. Everybody has expressed horror that Trump is negotiating with the Ukraine on the basis of effectively, and again, can I explain what is going to result from this? I think we're going to see a partition of the Ukraine between a Soviet, a Russian sphere of influence, and an American sphere of influence. The West will become a kind of industrial colony of America because of the extraordinary mineral resources, and the East will revert to being a dependency of Moscow. That is exactly the sort of thing that happened in the 18th and 19th centuries when, for example, Poland was partitioned between Germany on the one hand, in those days it was called Prussia, and Austria and Russia. We're going to see that world again. The trouble is, it was a world in which Britain in those days was a dominant power. It was also a world in which we were not a victim power. Let's again look at that idea of partition and how shocking everybody says it is that America will strip the Ukraine of its assets. Let's look back at the most heroic moment of cooperation between Britain and the United States. That's to say, when Roosevelt assists Britain in the Second World War. Do you know what terms he did it on, Stephen? Stripping Britain of its entire foreign reserves. The entire wealth of Victorian Britain, that Edwardian Britain, that extraordinary accumulation of the world's most successful trading power was transferred directly to America to pay for wartime help, the so-called Lend-Lease system. Now, it's really important we understand this. America did not give it to Britain free. We were stripped. We were stripped by our closest ally, right? Again, it is even more striking. Look at the aftermath of the Second World War. What is it that ends the British Empire? What ends the British Empire is America. It's Dwight Eisenhower, the president who had actually led, when he was the Allied general, had commanded the Allied forces, led the D-Day landings and whatever. What does he do? He effectively, by refusing to support Britain and France in Suez, ushers in directly the end of the British Empire. So when you look at those maps, which show Britain before 1939, ruling the quarter of the globe, to Britain at the end of the 1960s, shrunken more or less to this island, it is our American allies who are directly responsible. This is the reality of great power politics. We've been lying to ourselves. We've been pretending. We've got confused motives. And of course, the exemplar of all of this is this appalling government that we have at present, which is riddled from, whose policies are riddled from top.